Hey, Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video page. I'm at a whole different location. I'm in between Kalispell and Libby, Montana, at a place called Middle Thompson Lake. And we're on the back side of the lake, and this way, there's nothing but forest. Out that way, there's some homes and some things, but this is a really pretty spot. And I'm here today because I'm attending a weekend kind of service for a group called the Good Grief Nonprofit. And I met a woman a number of months ago that runs this. And it's a organization that hosts kids that have lost a loved one during the previous year. It's kind of a grief counseling weekend. And it's a super good cause. So I'm going to the end of their weekend service here, and I'm actually looking forward to it. It'll be good. And so if you're thinking about looking into something, the Good Grief Nonprofit, it's out of Kalispell. So I'm going to get right to the cases. I made a video a number of weeks ago on Nora Quinn. And she was a UK girl, 15 years old, who was spending time at a resort with her parents outside of Kuala Lumpur. And she disappeared in the middle of the night from her parents' cabin. And she was developmentally disabled. And I won't go into a ton of details because I already made the video about it. I'll put the link on this. But they came to a decision, law enforcement and the judicial system in this small community, that her death was linked as accidental. She was found half in a creek, and she disappeared August 4th, 2019, and she's found 9 days later. And they said that she had an ulcer and that they thought she died of starvation after 9 days. I didn't believe it then. I said that something else happened. If you look at the spot where she disappeared, boulders all over, half in a creek, half not. Parents said she'd never leave the cabin voluntarily. Well, just last week, the parents appealed, and they came back with another judicial notice that said that they're going to overturn the previous ruling and say that more follow-up needs to be done, and it was suspicious. Her dad had contacted me while this was going on because he had heard about what I'd researched and how I felt about the daughter's case. And I just told him to keep pushing because there is something very odd about what happened to this girl. She didn't just voluntarily leave. Don't know what happened, but it wasn't voluntary. So on to the first email. It says, you're very careful with your speech. So you probably know why you're getting more resistance, just in case you don't. The problem is that our government authorities strongly suspect that the phenomena of missing people is somehow tied to the more paranormal aspects of UFOs. UFOs are supposed to be secret, so because of this relationship, your research threatens to accelerate current UFO secrecy reforms, degrading secrecy, into parentheses, until the feds have very little control over secrets they view as very important, partly due to terrestrial rivalries. As the USSR has discovered, the most dangerous period for a government is when it begins instituting reform. But that's pretty good. And I don't know, it might be true, might not, but there's been a lot of resistance. No question there. New email. A missing toddler is now safe after, this one's a weird one. This is WDAM if you want to look it up, because it's still posted, and the video of this Mississippi highway patrolman driving along a road, seeing this little tyke, 2 years old, walking along in the grass is bizarre. A missing toddler is now safe after a Mississippi highway patrolman found the child standing on the side of a county road by himself Thursday afternoon. It's a route the highway patrolman doesn't usually take. Quoting, I was actually headed home an hour late and just happened to get along this route I was on, which is a very rural road maintained by the county as opposed to a state highway which we normally travel on. said Kevin Bentley, a trooper. The trooper then noticed a toddler walking along a Jasper County Road 20. I look out in the pasture, and there about 6 feet from the fence is a 2-year-old climbed up a ladder, and it just is standing there, Bentley said. And I have to just make a quick look. I can just imagine this highway patrolman looking, going, that doesn't seem to be in the right thing to be looking at here. There's nothing but a huge pasture and those little tiny boys standing with nobody around. He said he pulled up alongside, opened his door, the toddler runs over to him, and he goes, I'm in shock. Where's the parents? Where's everybody? So the highway patrolman did some research, has a little boy, 2 years old. He's 7 miles from home, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The boy disappeared at 7:30 in the morning. The highway patrolman can't even believe. He's not looking for this kid because he's too far from the scene. How did this little boy get there? Make a long story short, he calls for an ambulance. Boy had some cuts and things over his legs and body, and he's taken to a hospital. He seemed to be fine. Now, in the video, if you look at it online, you can see the boy's wearing pants and shoes. But how did he get there? And the highway patrolman said that he had to have crossed some major highways to get to the location where he was. So if he wasn't standard abduction, how did he get there? Very strange. And when you see him walking alongside the road, I can only imagine what the patrolman thought. What the heck am I seeing here? So thank God he was there. But one of the questions I asked when I saw this, if the patrolman never takes this road on his way home, what caused him to take that road that day? Was there some kind of intervention subliminally saying, hey, go this route home? So anyhow, so the next story happened in Mountain View, Arkansas. And I followed up with this. That's how I know where it happened. So I got this original email. Hey, Dave, I live in north central Arkansas. I know it's not one of your hot spots, but it is in the foothills of the Ozark Mountains. So many creeks, lakes, rivers, and wooded mountains. Also near the state park of Blanchard Springs Caverns. It's beautiful. Somewhere around 94, 95, I was about 15 years old. I was missing from my bed one morning. My sister, 2 years older than me, and I shared a bedroom, and she woke up one morning and after sitting in the living room for a bit asked Mom, hey, where's so-and-so? Mom answers she's in bed. Why? To which my sister responded, she is not. My parents went to the bedroom, searched the room and other rooms that were scared because they thought maybe I'd snuck out or something had happened and I wasn't able to make it home. For the record, I've never snuck out of the house. My dad checked all the house windows. They were locked. He also searched outside of the windows to see if there were any prints or anything. Nothing. After 20-30 minutes of searching and my mom starting to panic, they searched the whole house again, and they find me asleep in my bed. I woke up that morning to my dad's voice deep and gruff. I could tell he was shaken, asking where had I just been? And me, completely confused and just waking up, I told him I was sleeping. My dad, mom, and younger sister walked out of the bedroom doorway without another word. By this time, I was very concerned and jumped out of bed and went to find my mom in the kitchen, visibly shaking and trying to wash dishes. I asked her what was wrong, and she replied, you weren't in your bed. We searched everywhere, inside and out, and you weren't there. Needless to say, I don't know what to think. The weird thing is, we had a family dog, a mid-sized poodle who slept with me and only got up when I was up. I heard, parentheses, from what seemed like a doze state, end of quotations, my sister get up that morning, and I felt, parentheses, I felt the mattress depress as she leaned down to pet the dog. The dog was still in the bed, even though they say that I wasn't there. It's like my consciousness was there in that moment, but my physical body wasn't. And the dog seemed to know I was there, and that's why she was still in bed. I don't know. I have thought about it throughout my life. I remember nothing except for her petting the dog that morning and then my dad waking me later. I wondered how often I might have disappeared in the night without anyone knowing. Maybe they were late returning me, but my consciousness was aware of that small moment without my physical body being present. Crazy but true. And if my parents and sister hadn't noticed that I was missing, I probably would have never known. There were three witnesses to my disappearance. It makes me wonder, after watching your videos, why some are returned alive, why some are found deceased later, and why some are never found at all. Just a note, I'm a Caucasian female and have a German surname on my dad's side. Kind of weird. You know, I've told you before about people who have disappeared from the inside of their home and there's no evidence how they got out, alarms were on, nobody saw anything. How does it happen? You know? Some know, some don't. But I thought that was an interesting story. Next note. Thank you so much for all you and your team are doing to keep these missing people in the public eye. There's so many families struggling to go on without their loved ones and without answers. Not knowing is a form of torture. And you're asking the question, where are they? Demands me to continue to look for the answers. Thank you for the countless hours you spend doing the research and reading stories, replying to emails, and trying to answer the bigger question, what is going on? I truly care about these cases now that I've found your missing 411 videos and movies. I would like to share a story with you about a shared death experience I had with my grandfather when he passed away, which has an interesting parallel to some of the stories and letters you have covered. I would try to keep it short. My grandfather had a history of heart attacks, something like 7. So when my sister called me in hysterics saying he had another, I wasn't that worried. This was in 1984 and I was a teenager. She drove us to our grandparents' house where the paramedics were working on my grandfather. They worked on him several minutes and couldn't get him to wake up. And they lost his heart twice. It was during that time, of the second time they lost his heart, that an aura appeared around the body. And it got dark, very dark. And it appeared that I may have been the only one who was observing this. And then I heard what I thought was my grandfather saying, "Can I go? Can I go?" And I said, "Yes, go ahead, Gramps." And it was several seconds later, the aura stopped. It just disappeared. The darkness left, and the paramedics at about that time were starting to give up. I never stated anything about this to anyone because I didn't think anyone would believe it. But it was also at about this time that they loaded him in the ambulance and they left. Several hours later, I heard that my grandfather had died. My family was in hysterics, but in my heart I knew that my grandfather had passed. Nobody else ever mentioned this to me or my sister or relatives. To this day, I still haven't told anyone. I don't think anyone would believe me. You know what's funny about, not funny, but you know what about that really hits home for me? Because I've heard similar stories many times. And I think there is something about, maybe it was the relationship you had with your grandfather, or some other reason that you saw this aura. Hard to say, but it was a special moment for you for sure. So the cases I'm going to talk to you about are in and around Yosemite National Park today. And you're going to see some strange parallels, very strange. A few things about Yosemite a lot of people don't know is it's 759,000 acres. It was established August 1st, 1890, and there were several Native American tribes that lived in and around Yosemite Valley. And the Native American tribes had some strange names for Yosemite I'll talk about someday. There's 400 vertebrate species that live in the park, and the budget in 2019, which was the last time the park was in full service, it was $29 million. They had 800 summer employees and 478 winter employees. And a lot of people think that when they go into a park, the concessions are manned by the National Park Service. They are not. The National Park Service rents out those spaces to private companies that have their employees that run the service. The park has 214 miles of paved road, 800 miles of trails. In 2019, they had 4.586 million visitors. And here's the part that most people don't understand. There were 225 search and rescue operations in 2019. It's a lot. 91% of the visitors come from the US, and 89% of that 91% come from California. The 9% of the international tourists predominantly come from Germany, Korea, Taiwan, and the UK. In 2020, this is hard to believe, in 2020, 17 bears were hit by cars. 5 died. A lot of bears in Yosemite Valley. If you camp in Yosemite overnight and you get up in the middle of the night, there's a pretty good chance you're going to see some bears on those roads. They're all over. And that's why they tell people to keep the bears away from their campsites, keep your doors locked, and don't keep food near where you're sleeping. 75% of all visitors arrive between May and October. So, my recommendation to you, don't arrive between May and October. Now, weird thing is that the granite, well, it has more granite in and around Yosemite than any place in the world. And at night, when the sun hits it just right, the granite will almost turn red, which is weird, but it's kind of pretty. Yosemite Falls, 2,425 feet in height, and it's the one place in the world that you can see a rainbow around those falls at night under the right circumstances. I've been to Yosemite many times, and personally, I like the spring the best because the waterfalls are the biggest. It's also a real different place to go in the middle of winter. You got to be ready for it because the weather can be horrendous, but it's really a cool place in the middle of winter. Not many people, no bears, and usually, but it's pretty neat. Yosemite Village is predominant location where people are going to see in the floor of the valley. It's like a little city. Stores, gas stations, hotels. If you get there, you want to go to the Ahwahnee Hotel. Really a pretty place, really pretty. And their ballroom where they have meals, epically gorgeous. Make sure you make reservations sometimes months, years in advance to stay there. But it's really pretty. So, let me tell you about Yosemite and a couple of these disappearances. So, many of the concessions in Yosemite are operated by a company called the Curry Company. This is in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. And on July 28th, 1967, there were 2 young men that were working for the Curry Company at their gas station in Yosemite Village. John Gunn, he was 19 years old, and he lived in the city of Richmond, California, just north of San Francisco. And a guy named Kenneth Klein, who was from San Antonio, Texas, who was 23. And they got to be buddies. Well, they finally had a day off together. And on the 28th of July, 1967, they decided that they were going to climb and go through a trekking area near Upper Yosemite Falls. So one had a motor scooter, and one had a car. So they parked them at different locations, one near the falls and one where they were going to come out, and they took off. Last seen the 28th of July, 1967. Well, when they don't come back to work, they notify search and rescue, and the search is on. Well, they find the cars pretty quick, and they start searching. And they knew that they went into the Upper Yosemite Falls area, and they searched all the creeks real thorough, and they weren't finding anything. And a 2-week search, they didn't find anything. And after 2 weeks, they call off the search and rescue. Now, on September 3rd, that's about 5, almost 6 weeks after they disappear, a tourist is in the upstream of the lower Yosemite Falls Creek, and they're in a deep pool, and they find John Gunn's body in the deep pool. He's wearing shorts and shoes, that's it. And they call the police. National Park Service police arrive, and they find that he has a broken neck. He goes for autopsy, and it showed that he drowned, which means he went into the water alive, possibly with a broken neck at that point, and drowned. Now, let's understand. How did he get there? We don't know. Where was he for 5 weeks? We don't know. But the most peculiar thing, where's his partner, Kenneth Klein? He's never been found. Nothing of his has ever been found. So that was July 28th, 67. Gunn is found on September 3rd. And they're in the middle of this cluster zone. So these two guys disappear on the 28th of July, 67. Okay, now let's go forward 11 days from there. And another employee of the Curry Company, a guy named Gary Frazier, a guy named Tom Opperman, 21 years old. And he's from Fresno, California. He's 21 years old. He was a valet in Yosemite National Park at the Tuolumne Meadows Lodge. Tom was a super athlete. At Fresno High School, he was an all-state in wrestling and in cross-country running. He went on to college. He was the son of Reverend Joseph Opperman of Fresno. People like to know this is a religious affiliation. Well, Tom was very religious. Super clean-cut kid. Followed religion, going to college, and trying to work his way through school. And you can kind of see the picture there. That's Tom. So he tells friends and he tells his parents who are staying at the park that he's going to go and he's going to go on an overnight camping trip, just himself, and he's going to be back the next morning or next afternoon. And he's going to try to summit out at a place called Mount Clark. Well, the parents happen to be staying at the Tuolumne Meadows Lodge, says goodbye to him, takes off on the morning of August 8th, 67, 11 days after Gunn and Klein disappear. All were employees of the park concessionaire, Curry Company. So Opperman takes off, and halfway into that first day, he sees a guy named Clyde Deal. And Clyde is the manager of the High Sierra camp. And he asks Clyde, who's on his day off as well, hey, which way do I go to get to Mount Clark? And Clyde gives him directions, and away he goes. And here's what's weird. Clyde Deal was the manager of the High Sierra camp where Stacey Harris disappeared. And everybody knows Stacey Harris' case has been front and center in my life for many years. So that's a weird coincidence. Anyhow, that's the last person to see Tom alive, was Clyde Deal. And Clyde says he gave him directions to Mount Clark, said he was going straight there. Don't hear anything more about it. So the National Park Service gets notified by the parents when Tom doesn't come home the next morning, and they start searching. And they goes all over the park, what's happening, and Clyde gets a hold of the National Park Service police and says, hey, I just saw this kid, and explains where. So they had a start point. Well, the Park Service put forth a huge effort to find Tom. And for 2 weeks, they searched air, ground, and they searched 7,000 acres by ground pounders, meaning people like you and me walking shoulder to shoulder. They searched 8,000 acres by helicopter intensely. And then they also said they did 2,700 additional acres by helicopter loosely. The note on Tom was he was in outstanding physical condition, and the amount of time it took him to go from the lodge to where Clyde Deal saw him was unbelievable. He was pounding fast. He was religious. He had a backpack, metal framed, boots, belt buckle. That stuff should have lasted forever. They should find it right now today. They never found him. Where did Tom Opperman go? 11 days before or after John Gunn disappears, Tom Opperman disappears. That's too weird. The location between those two was a matter of miles from the point they disappeared. All inside the park within 11 days. So you have a cluster zone inside Yosemite. All that area around Tom and Gunn was filled with water. You have granite, probably the most granite in the world for one location, Yosemite. He's an athlete, he's a runner, and he's religious. Point of separation. After he sees Clyde deal, nobody ever sees him again. I'm telling you, it's weird. But the strangeness doesn't end there. Because Tom Opperman disappeared on August 8th, 1967, 11 days after Gunn and Klein. But also the same day, a boy named Gary Frazier, 10 years old, disappeared at 11 a.m. from a location called Crown Valley Basin in Fresno. So, here's the map. This is where Gary's at, Crown Valley Basin, Fresno County. Here's where Opperman disappeared. Just on the other side of the park is where Gunn and Klein disappeared. This is across the Sierras. All of this area right in here has hundreds of small bodies of water. Hundreds. And what I've told people before is that I could just look at a map and tell you exactly where people are disappearing based on all of these bodies of water and granite. So Gary Frazier, he's only 10 years old. He's vacationing with his parents and his uncle, and they hike way into an area near Portal Lake, Portal, near Crown Valley Basin. Well, they're in there and they're camping, and Gary says, "Hey, Mom and Dad, I'm going to go up here just above this ridge above you and take a look up there." Parents don't think anything of it. They're in the middle of nowhere. They see the sun go up to the top. It's at about 10,000 feet, and he disappears over a ridge. He doesn't come back that afternoon. They do a massive search, just the parents, the uncle, they don't find him. And Paul Schultz, the uncle, takes off that night and hikes all night and into the following morning, just hucking it 20 miles through the wilderness on this trail to get out to get help. Fresno County sheriffs fly a helicopter, a high altitude helicopter in and land in that basin and get to the parents. Then they start bringing in canines, etc. Well, they find Gary's tracks going up over this ridge of solid granite, heading towards this old abandoned cabin that hadn't been used in years. And the deputies know that that was the point he was last seen. They put the dogs on it, and quickly the dogs lose the scent, according to the sheriffs, on the granite. So they don't know what to do. So they bring in an Army team, U.S. Army and Marines, that are at the training center there, just outside of Yosemite. And it's a high altitude winter survival center. And they bring in 25 of those guys, plus 10 deputies, and they search for a week and a half. So they had bloodhounds, they had the Army, they had the deputies, they had helicopter from the Army. They had Sierra Madre search and rescue that came out from Southern California, because Gary and his family were from Santa Monica. And they all search, and they're not finding anything. And this is one of the most puzzling cases to me, because that area, there's no ground cover. You're above timberline. So he's around tons of granite, tons of water. He's in a cluster zone. Canines lose the scent. Where'd Gary Frazier go? It's the same question Tom Opperman. Where'd he go? They both disappeared on the same day, miles apart. What is that? I don't know. I don't know how you can reconcile that. And I doubt at the same time that search and rescue even knew these cases were simultaneous, because they were different jurisdictions, and jurisdictions usually don't talk about it to each other. Now, the case with Gunn and Klein, when they disappeared in Yosemite and Opperman disappears 11 days later, I'm sure Yosemite's just thinking, well, two separate incidents, two separate areas, whatever. But then you throw in the Frazier case, and then you have 3 cases within 50 plus miles. It starts to get odd. So it's been over 60 years now And Klein's never been found. Opperman's never been found. Frazier's never been found. 3 cases that really not many people ever talk about. But why would it be important? Because I think we study history for a reason. And I'd be remiss if I didn't show you Gary's picture. So that's Gary Frazier. 10 years old when he disappeared. Massive search. The articles actually even talked about his parents driving home to Santa Monica after that. You know, how could life ever be the same? So, if you can, give the video a thumbs up. Please pass it around. We're in the middle of summer right now, and people tend to think, oh, you know, when we go to a national park, this is like Disneyland. I'll just let my kids run all around and not even care. No, this is the wilderness. A lot of things happen. Now, where Gary disappeared up above 10,000 feet, there are no grizzly bear in that area of California. There's no grizzly bear in California. There's black bear. But if he would have been attacked, there would have been a scene. They would have found it. There are no predators up that high that are acknowledged. But keep close tabs on your kids when you're in the wilderness. Don't ever let them wander out of your sight. Keep them close. Keep them in front of you. So, don't buy my books on Amazon. I looked today, somewhere over $100 a piece. Go to my website, and you can follow me on Twitter, David Paulides at Can Am Missing. I truly appreciate your support. And I'm going to give you a little scan here of this cove because it's really pretty. Let's just see what it's like. But if you look at this this little cove, I'm going to see if I can get you over to a little area over here. May not be bright enough. There's some little ducklings in there. They're playing around. And there's a guy out here in the middle that's fishing. This is kind of the scan here of the guy out there fishing. And there's a home over there on the other side that, wow, I'd love to stay at it. House over there on the other side of that boat, gorgeous place. There's a few residences further out here, but where we're at, this is a little campground, nobody's here. Anyhow, we're probably 25 miles from Libby, Montana, and very close to the Idaho border. So anyhow, that's the video for today. Have a great week. Thanks for watching.